the country. We're going to get to some of the thoughts that I have on players that I think the Panthers may be interested in, players I think could end up in the organization and in and around the NFC South. So I'm going to talk about that later on in the radio broadcast. We've got some NBA stuff as the playoff races are getting hot. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know who the official healthcare provider of the Charlotte Hornets is right now. I hope it's somebody I'm not financially connected with at this point. But my goodness, they're going to be a busy group of individuals. The Charlotte Hornets just cannot stay healthy. More injuries racking up yesterday as they are down in my town, the Big Easy of New Orleans, Louisiana. A triple-double recorded by Brandon Ingram was enough to get the Pellies past the buzz. And another major injury racked up for the Charlotte Hornets. We'll talk to you about that later on in the radio broadcast and a whole lot more. T2 is here on the board. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
Doing good. How are you guys today?
Oh, it's a day, man. It's a day and a busy one, which, of course, you guys are not only welcomed, but highly and heavily encouraged to be a part of the show on a Friday. 844-326-3663. 844-326-3663. You can text us on the text line at 713-0771-307. I have just pushed the old button that gets the text line activated at 71307. Start your text with FAN. FAN, 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 and we will read them on the air. You can also tweet me at The Rob Brown Show, at The Rob Brown Show, if you want to go in that direction. Let's start with this. Sincere question for y'all. How much do you care about what's happening with Aaron Rodgers at this point? That's a genuine, bona fide, not meant to be a troll, sincere question. How much do you care about what is happening in the Aaron Rodgers discussion? A little, a lot, some, none. The Jets have signed former Kansas City Chief wide receiver Mecole Hardman. They have traded Elijah Moore, one of their current wide receivers, for a second-round pick. So now the Jets have Mecole Hardman and Allen Lazard on opposite sides of the field and may still be interested in Odell Beckham Jr. Remember, OBJ was a guy that A-Rod of the football persuasion was trying to convince them to pick up and add to the mix had he, or if they wanted him to have a landing spot in the Big Apple. Well, let's call it what it is, New Jersey. All right? They're in Jersey. Ugh. Anyway, the OBJ thing is a little bit less likely to happen now that they've got Hardman and Lazard. And now it's basically time to play the waiting game, right? The Jets want A-Rod of the football persuasion. I think at this point it is all but obvious that the Green Bay Packers wish to be done with Aaron Rodgers. They wish to move on from A-Rod of the football persuasion. So the question now is going to be, why isn't this done? Will it get done? When will it get done? And what happens after that? What happens after that? What is next? We know that the dominoes have begun to fall in the hunt for quarterbacks around the league. We got the memo from the National Football League yesterday telling NFL teams that they are allowed to negotiate only and directly with Lamar Jackson. There were rumors kicking around the league that there were unconnected parties reaching out and talking to NFL teams, quote, end quote, on behalf of Lamar Jackson. The NFL sent out a memo saying, nope, you can talk to Lamar and nobody else. Lamar is not officially represented by an agent, which means he's the only one you can talk to. And the fact that there's just so damn much drama going on right now, so much drama going on around Lamar Jackson. I don't know, man. It's just like I don't know if Lamar's hurting or helping himself as far as getting a job. But the point of all this is, to circle back to the beginning of this, Aaron Rodgers is the next domino to fall. We know where his likely landing spot is. We know the only landing spot it appears that he is going to be willing to go is the Big Apple. But if you're Green Bay and you're just tired of this dude, like the texter who just texted me at 71307 and said, fan, I'm, quote, tired of this dude, said, quote, wish he would just retire. If you're tired of this dude as the Green Bay Packer organization, then what, right? Then what? Do you just cut him? You know what? Don't worry about it. You don't want to be here. We don't want you here. Do you spitefully let him play one more season in Green Bay? I mean, I think the answer to that's going to be no, considering you just dropped Allen Lazard and sent him to the Jets. I don't know, man. Here's what I know. We are 3 weeks away from the NFL franchise's off-season programs getting started. The Jets off-season program begins April 17th. They'll have about 2.5 weeks of conditioning, training, yada, 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 before practices begin in late May. So the Jets and the Packers are trying to get something done here. The problem is neither team has leverage over the other, but neither team wants to give in, right? And I'm to the point where, despite acknowledgement that Aaron Rodgers is still one of the best 5 quarterbacks in the National Football League, I'm just kind of tired of the situation, right? Like, why is it that in a week we've got 3 really good Sweet 16 games yesterday and then another one, a day today where we've got 4 what I think could be very good Sweet 16 games, a week in which the World Baseball Classic comes to its conclusion. We got all of this stuff going on, and I'm flipping channels here at the palatial Fan Upstate Studios before I come on the air, getting ready to do this show. And like every channel is Aaron Rodgers discussion. Why haven't the Jets made the move? Are the Packers getting scared of life without Rodgers? What about this? What about that? Should he? Shouldn't he? Should they? Should they not? I just want it to get done. Not because Aaron Rodgers owes us, hurry up, or the Jets or the Packers owe us to hurry up. They don't. It's a business transaction involving 3 different parties that all need to feel like they can walk around the table properly compensated. I'm just tired of it because it's the only damn thing anybody's talking about when I turn on the TV in the AM, and it's frustrating as hell. Texas said, Rob, not a huge fan of Aaron Rodgers, but he's been one of the faces of the league for a while, so I want to see him play still, and it could be a cool story for the Jets. Yeah, it could. I mean, listen, I told you last year that the Jets, I truly believed, were a great quarterback away from being good. And you look down the stretch, they were pretty good until they weren't. At the very end of the season when they just completely fell apart. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to let them fall apart that way. But again, we'll see. Tom Brady wasn't going to for the Bucs either. And then last year they had to scrap to get over 500 and win the worst division in football, maybe football history, right? I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to let the Jets fall apart like that. I think quite the opposite. I think the Jets versus the Bills becomes maybe the most intriguing divisional rivalry in all of football if he's there. I'm just so tired of talking about it. I am. Like, go. There's so much happening in the NFL right now. Just go. Please. I'm begging you. Get it done. Not because you owe us anything. None of you do. Just so we can stop talking about it. Let's take a break. When we come back here in just a minute. Remember yesterday, we talked a little bit about the NCAA and how if the NIL legislation went through that everybody was going to quit caring about college sports, because what it is about college sports that we all love is the amateurism. And that love is just going to, like a Taylor Swift song, fall apart. And then remember how that didn't happen? Well, the new president of the NCAA made some comments yesterday, and Chuck Barkley decided to respond. God, I love Chuck. And you'll find out why when we come back. My name is Rob Brown. T2's on the board, and you're listening to The Rob Brown Show. You are listening to the Fan Upstate. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Welcome in, everybody. Good morning. Happy Friday.
Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingalls, low prices, love the savings.
This feature is sponsored by Jackson Hewitt. Taxes are almost due. Hurry into Jackson Hewitt for 50% off tax prep, but do it before April 9th. Limited time offer for new clients filing at participating locations. Max savings $200. Visit jacksonhewitt.com/50 for terms.
Sponsored by Corley Plumbing, Air and Electric.
Plumbing, Air, and Electric, we provide transparent, upfront pricing you can depend on. Call Corley Plumbing, Air, and Electric today, or skip the line and book online. CorleyPro.com. That's CorleyPro.com.
Getting the game on the
The Rob Brown Show's on your radio. This is the Fan Upstate, ladies and gentlemen. T2, I'm going to go to some sound here, if you don't mind. Yesterday, Charlie Baker, who is the new president of the NCAA, took over from Mark Emmert, who stepped down a couple of weeks back officially. He was on, I don't remember, one of the sports talking shows with Greg Gumbel. And obviously they were talking about March Madness. They were talking about the issues facing the NCAA, and they were talking predominantly about NIL. This is going to be clip number 2, please, Timmy. And Baker was talking about something that we have brought up on the show many times. And I don't think we're unique in that fact. I think everybody has been talking about this for some time. But the necessity for regulation of NIL across all schools in order to create a system that is equitable to the athletes, but also fair across the entire college sports landscape, so that there are not advantages to it for bigger schools or I shouldn't say bigger schools, for schools that are in states like the state of Florida that have basically knocked down all guardrails to the NIL. Now, play what Charlie Baker said first, and then I'm going to play you what Charles Barkley said in response when he heard this audio for the first time. Here, and to those of you on the stream, we apologize. You're not going to be able to hear the audio here, but I'll summarize it for you when we get done with it. Here's what Charlie Baker said to Greg Gumbel yesterday. So Charlie says, look, my plan is to go talk to the folks in the feds, to go talk to the federal government and try to get them to kind of help us lay down some regulations. Now, there are some different realities to this, right? One of the realities is state by state, you're going to have different states, if the states are the law of the land, that are going to handle it in different ways. And we've seen that already, right? There are some states that have some pretty hefty regulations in place. There are other states like Florida that have said, screw that, let's go. Wide open, full throttle. And I think in those states, they're looking at it from the perspective of, look, if we open up NIL to where the athletes have few to no restrictions, our schools are going to do better, right? Like our schools are going to do better if that is the case. And I find that interesting. I don't know if the feds, if the NCAA is going to have a choice but to go to the feds, because the other angle of this is if the NCAA itself tries to put regulations down, they're going to be challenged probably legally in different courts at different levels across the country. And that ain't going to be easy. Now, I love Chuck Barkley. Charles Barkley, this is going to be clip number 3, if you don't mind, Tim. Charles Barkley heard that audio for the first time yesterday evening at halftime of one of the games. And Charles Barkley had his own very interesting response. Here's what Chuck had to say. They all crooks. Now, let me be abundantly clear here. I'm not disagreeing with Charles Barkley. Okay? I'm not. Do I suspect, hope, but suspect that there are a couple of federal level politicians in DC that are there for the right reasons? Yes. I think there's a few. I think a lot of them we don't know, because I think the best way to get yourself on television and famous as a politician is to act up one direction or the other, right? I'd like to think there are a few good, honest people in Washington, D.C. representing us at the federal level. And frankly, in my, as you all know, relentlessly optimistic mind, believe that those people are the true guardrails for the federal government. Those people are the checks and balances. But maybe not. I don't know. Here's what I do know. When NIL became a serious conversation a couple of years ago, there were a lot of people, myself included, and this is not to pat myself on the back, but I will. There were a few of us that said, look, we're fine with NIL, right? In fact, not only was I fine with NIL, I'm in favor of NIL. I think it's fine. I don't think people should be prohibited from making a name, making an image, making a likeness, and getting paid for that. If you put in the work to create a name, an image, or a likeness that has so much recognition to it, that somebody is willing to give you money in order to use it to promote themselves, good on you. Because in this ever-increasing age of influencers, it's not easy to do. The market's crowded with faces that are getting paid money. So to get into that, to break, trust me, as somebody who's trying, it's not easy. Like at all. So, I got no problem with NIL, but I also said from the very beginning that you've got to start putting the guardrails down now. You've got to put the guardrails down before you enact this. Not because I'm a big fan of regulations. I'm really not. But because I am also a realist who understands that regulations can be necessary. Because without regulations, you end up with some people who take advantage of the system, some people who end up creating unfair working situations, And not that Ron DeSantis in Florida has done anything wrong here, because to be clear, he has not. Ron DeSantis said, all right, the NCAA's got no regulations regarding NIL. So why the hell should Florida knock the guardrails down? Let's open it up and let's let Florida schools benefit from this. And they have. But in Ron DeSantis doing that, you have created a much more difficult situation for schools in, say, Iowa, where the guardrails are not only still up, but real thick too, right? They're going to bounce you back if you test them any. And that means that a team like the Iowa Hawkeyes, who is already at a disadvantage because they're, the Iowa Hawkeyes, now have an even greater disadvantage to a team like, hell, UCF or USF, the Florida Gators, et cetera, et cetera. So while I, 85% agree with Chuck Barkley, like I said, there's an optimistic part of me that hopes there's a few people in D.C. that aren't, what's the word I'm looking for here? Terrible. At the same time, I also understand that unless the NCAA can come up with a system of guidelines, and to be honest with you, I don't know what those guidelines look like, right? The metaphor I use all the time is, I don't need to be a Michelin star chef to know my steak is burnt, right? Because what's the thing all the time? Don't complain unless you bring solutions to the table. No, I think that's a bad mindset. If something is wrong, you should complain about it. You don't need to know how to fix it to point out that what it is now is broken, right? I'm not a mechanic. But if I go outside and I start my car and it goes, I don't need to be able to tell you what's wrong to go, something's wrong. So I think the NCAA failing to, as I asked for them to do 2+ years ago when NIL was coming down the pipe, when I had first moved here, when I said I'm pro NIL, I absolutely want NIL to be a part of college sports. I got no problem with it at all. I think if you've got a quarterback who plays for a team, who generates success for the team, and packs 110,000 people into a stadium and allows that school and those conferences to sell millions of dollars worth of television rights, I got no problem if Bob's Used Cars hands him a check for $50K to show up at their dealership a couple of times. I got news for you. Rob Brown, let me pull back the curtain. Rob Brown gets money to go places, do things, and say stuff. It's part of the territory of doing a job where people show up to talk to you, listen to you, watch you, whatever the case might be. So no issues with that. But I also said at the time, whatever rules and regulations you want to put into place, you better do them now. You better agree to them now. Because if you don't have those written down in law and you just go, NIL's good, go to town, you're going to create a quagmire. And that's exactly what has happened here. Now, I will say one more thing. The second part of what Chuck Barkley said, I entirely and completely agree with him. Chuck said, instead of going to D.C., what I would rather see, what I would rather have is a panel comprised of people who care about the sports. I would like to see college athletic directors, college head coaches, college presidents, TV executives, and players, athletes, the people who actually stand to benefit the most from this, right? I don't want a world where sitting at the table are a bunch of old guys who make millions of dollars a year legislating athletics The ones whose pockets feel, whether they are or not is a different discussion, but feel as if it is their money that is being threatened, as if it is their money that is going to be taken away and given to these athletes with no representation from the athletes themselves. The athletes should be at the table too. It's a little more difficult at the college level than it is at the professional level. At the professional level, when you look at collective bargaining agreements, you've got players' unions, players' associations that are effectively elected to represent the entire pool of players. Little more difficult to organize at the collegiate level. But what you can do is get former players that are willing to come back and lobby on behalf of the players, right? Go get former stars. Maybe a few that were pre-NIL, maybe a few that are post-NIL to be the voices of the players. Get some active players. Grab a guy who is a next year Heisman Trophy early bet, right? Somebody that's got a lot of sway. Go grab a next year men's and women's Naismith Memorial Trophy College Basketball Player of the Year award contender. Go get a track and field superstar at a school like in Oregon, where those sports are big time. Go get a baseball star out of one of the teams that tries to go to Omaha and successfully goes to Omaha every year. Go get players from the highest levels of college athletics and bring them to the table too. Because while I agree with Chuck that the more we can leave the federal government out of this, the better. If you don't get something done, and you don't get something done with representatives of college sports from within college sports and get everybody on the same page within the college sports environment and effectively come up with what is a de facto collective bargaining agreement, you're not going to have a choice but to get DC involved. Every state's going to handle it a different way, and you're going to create situations where some states are going to benefit and some are not, or it's just going to take one or two more states to do what Florida did, open the table up, and then everybody's going to have to do it, and then there's no rules at all. There's no regulations at all. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Again, I don't know what that looks like. But if you're going to do something as the NCAA, you should do it as the NCAA. You should have athletes at the table, athletic directors at the table, administrators at the table, TV execs at the table, and all of them should have a voice equal to everybody else's and try to get something done within, because the next step, if you can't get it done within, is to jump over the states. And what's the next step there? It is the feds. It is Washington, D.C. Hudson says, I'm totally for across-the-board regulation here. Give these schools an equal limit per year for athlete pay and say spend it how you want. That's the thing, Hudson. This money does not come from the schools. This isn't like, okay, every school gets $5 million a year distributed amongst your athletes. Remember, NIL comes from businesses that want to use athletes to promote their business. It's booster clubs. It's businesses. That's where that money comes from, right? So this isn't as easy as give every school $5 million a year out of the NCAA coffers and let them spend it how they want. And by the way, if that's the case, does Cal State Fullerton get the same amount as Cal? Does Florida Atlantic get the same amount as Florida State? That's not going to work. I get what you're saying, and I understand. But I've also heard the arguments about salary caps, right? There should be an NIL cap. Your school cannot have athletes making more than a collective X million dollars per year. Well, aren't you kind of limiting stuff there? Well, you go, wait a minute, Rob, the NFL has a salary cap, the NBA has a salary cap, right? But those salary caps are agreed to by the collective bargaining agreement. Those salary caps are agreed to by negotiations, labor negotiations from the players who are under that salary cap. So if you want to go with the cap, I'm good with that. But bring the players to the table and negotiate what a good cap looks like. So anyway, just some thoughts. Appreciate Chuck's input. There's mine. Let's take a break. When we come back, pitch clocks, larger bases, shorter games. Is it working? How are players reacting? I got audio from a Cardinals game yesterday that I want to play for you. I'll tell you what happened, and we'll see what your thoughts are. Texas says, go get Armando Bacot in his 12th year. He knows all the rules by now. Bacot's staying one more year while 4 other Tar Heels transfer out. That's interesting. Back after this on the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
I'll be right back.
All right, y'all. Thanks for hanging out. Oh, Lord. More dad jokes. What do you call a derailed train? I don't know. What do you call it, Hudson? Hit me with it. I need it.
AmericanEagle.com, the architect of P.F. Chang's website, integrating multiple third-party systems to create a unified digital experience. The results? Improved page speed and performance, personalized content based on users' location, intuitive.
A locomotive. All right. Over my head? I don't know. Over my head, maybe? A locomotive. Yeah, I mean, that's what you just call a train, right? Or is it supposed to be a locomotive? I'm an idiot. I'm not going to lie to you, fellas. I'm a bit slow on the draw today. That's why there are multiple monsters on the table in front of me. Oh, I'm trying to pull my life together right now, kids.
Jake, if you are Georgia AD Josh Brooks, what's your reaction to Kirby's 21 bleak, profanity-laced tirade in his pregame speech?
I'm giving him a lifetime contract. Don't change a thing. Look, if people really heard what was really said in there, come on now. You're going out there to play one of the most violent games that there is. It is the gladiator sport of our time. You think anybody's calling the school and withdrawing the money they're sending because Kirby cuts in the pregame speech? That probably doubled the money. We live in a society nowadays where everybody's got to be politically correct. You got to walk on eggshells. Screw that. At the end of the
Check it
day,
out.
the most successful or the best motivated.
Nice.
He's given a presentation today
I love it.
about Albert Einstein.
I love it.
Now, CBS Sports Radio.
On your radio at 97.7 FM, 1330 AM, Greenville, 97.1 FM, 950 AM, Spartanburg.
Listen on your phone, download the Odyssey app, and search The Fan Upstate.
There's a whole lot more to know about sound if you really want to get into the subject.
Your smart speaker. Just say play 97 The Fan Upstate. On your HD radio at WFBC HD3. There's just one more thing. And on your computer at The Fan.
TheFanUpstate.com.
With one of the best savings rates in America, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing Slash in your bank.
Next up for lead guitar. You're in.
Cool. Yep, even easier than that. And with no fees or minimums on checking and savings accounts, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One and a member FDIC.
Hi. Who's this?
Buzz, it appears whatever you eat, Honey Nut Cheerios.
Like a genie?
Sure.
Ooh, does he grant wishes? I wish I lived in a giant fleet. No, I wish I could swim with a humpback whale. No.
I can bring
There it is. Got it.
Cheerios, which can help lower cholesterol.
He meant locomotive because it's gone off the rails. It took me a second, Hudson. It took me a second. Yeah, so if you listen to the TV commercial of that commercial that just played with Slash, by the way, the commercial's in utility. All right, I'm going to go to clip number 4 here, if you don't mind, T2. This was yesterday in a Cardinals game. Catcher Wilson Contreras at the dish. And I'm just going to play the audio for you, and then I'll explain what happened. But suffice to say, there were more questions raised about the execution of the pitch clock based on what happened to Contreras. I'm going to tell you what happened, then we'll get your thoughts. Here is the clip from yesterday's Cardinals game. Contreras in the dish. He fouls off a pitch, goes in the hole 0-2, steps out of the box and adjusts his batting gloves. That's pretty standard. It's been that way for a very long time. The pitch clock resets. The pitch clock starts counting down as soon as the ball gets back to the pitcher. Contreras steps out of the box. He adjusts the Velcro on both of his batting gloves. He steps back into the box. But as we told you a couple of days ago, he was not looking at the pitcher when that 8-second mark hits the clock. And if the batter is not looking at the pitcher when the 8-second mark happens on the clock, the umpire gets a little buzz to alert him, and you're rung up for a strike. Contreras, being in the hole 0-2 after that foul ball, was then struck out. which means that Wilson Contreras ate the K without swinging the bat or without the pitcher earning a strike. Now, here's the problem I have with it. I still want ball players to be in control of what happens when it comes to BBs and Ks. I still want ball players to be out or not out based on what they do. I don't want a guy getting rung up for a K because he's not looking at the pitcher with 8 seconds left. And it seems like such an easy fix, right? Just take that one rule out. Just take that one rule out. When the batter steps out of the box, the umpire stops the pitch clock, but he starts a secondary clock on the batter. When you step out of the box, you have 8 seconds to step back into it. After a pitch, right? After a foul ball, after a K, if you step out of the box to reset, you have 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever number of seconds to get back in the box. Once you're back in the box, I don't care. You can look at the ground. You can hit your spikes with the bat. You can adjust your gloves, whatever you want. But once you're back in the box, the pitcher then can come set and deliver. And if you're not looking, when it's time for the pitcher to deliver the fastball, that's on you, right? You can pitcher sees you're not looking, throws it down the pipe, ring him up. He's done. Sit him down. It's such an easy fix that allows the players to still be in control of what happens. I don't need a guy in the regular season, especially one as important in the lineup as Contreras is. I don't need a guy getting sat down because of what direction his eyeballs are in. I want him sat down because the pitcher ran a fastball by him inside the K zone or because he swung and he whiffed. No, those are the two outcomes. But once you step out, you got 6 seconds to adjust your gloves, knock the dirt off your spikes, and climb back into the box. And then once you're in the box, the pitch clock runs. And when the pitch clock runs, the pitcher can start his windup and pitch. And if you're not looking, because you're looking down at the dirt or you're looking up trying to get a signal from whatever, okay, you're done. You missed it. That's on you. That being said, Jason Stark went and pulled together the number of clock violations week by week through spring training in Major League Baseball. Back in the first week of spring ball, the first week that the new rules went into play, there were 2.03 pitch clock violations per game. By week 2, that number fell by almost 25%, 1.49. By week 3, that number fell about another 15%. There were 1.13 pitch clock violation per game. Now, in the 4th week of baseball, which ended on Sunday, and we'll see what the data from this week leading up to opening day looks like. But in the 4th week of spring training, there were 1.03 pitch clock violations per game. The players got used to it and cut the number of violations in half. And I think that is part of the evolution of it, right? This was something that players have not been used to, had to get used to, had to learn the intricacies, et cetera, et cetera. And now that they've had 4 weeks to get used to the new rules, they're getting better about them. And that's fine. But I still don't think that means that I want to set a situation where a player can be K'd because his eyeballs aren't on the pitcher. That's on him. That's part of your job as a baseball batter, is to understand where the pitcher is in his delivery, where the ball is in the process, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need all-star caliber players in a big moment being set down because their eyeballs weren't in the right place at a specific and arbitrary number on the clock. once the batter's back in the box, after a predetermined number of seconds out of it, to get a signal from the third base coach or the dugout, to see where the runners are on the field, to see where the defenders are in the field, you're back in the box. Now it's between you and the pitcher. And if you spend too much time looking down at your cleats or making sure your shirt's got no dirt on it or whatever you're doing, and he runs it by you, you're done. You're out, right? Let the players dictate the outcomes of the situation, not a clock. The clock can still be used. Baseball games are running at a faster pace than they've run since like the early 70s. I'm fine with the clock itself, but it should not dictate the outcome of an at-bat. Let's take a break. We'll come back. Got a few more things I want to get into in the next hour, including, let's have the final debate. C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young. Who should Carolina take with the number 1 overall pick? I'll give you some final thoughts on that when we come back in the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate. I gotta move the mic because the seductive voice of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, Mark Shelley, as the bits are watching in the office, I assume, sent me a picture pointing out that I have rocked the Rabbits team branding today and then immediately covered it up on accident with the mic flag. My bad, Shelley. But that's why I'm a host and not a public relations specialist, all right? See that, Shelley, that's your job as the de facto team PR specialist, to send me a text saying, move the mic flag 3 inches left so that the Swamp Rabbits logo shines through. There you go. That's why you're in charge, fella. You said not all heroes wear capes. You're not the hero we wanted, Shelley, but you're the hero we deserved. I love it. All right. Let's see what else we got on the chat. James says the pitch clock is like the play clock in football. Yes, exactly. But could you imagine if football put in a rule that if the defensive backs aren't set in ready position with 4 seconds left, it's an automatic first down? Like, no. The shot clock is there in basketball. The pitch clock is there in baseball. The play clock is there in football. In order to tell you, the play has to happen at this point. But everything that leads up to that point is on the players. It's the one rule I don't care about. Mike says, who cares about baseball anymore? Me! Baseball fans, you're never going to get rid of us. James says, no one needs 5 minutes to scratch themselves. I don't know. What if you got a itch that requires a cream? I'm not in charge of that. Luke said, resetting is just superstition. It has killed the game. What other sport requires holding up the game from, knocking the cleats, adjust the gloves, adjusting the jersey, etc. I'm actually going to somewhat, as an old hat baseball player, Luke, who has not played organized ball in a very long time, but used to play year-round for probably 14 or 15 years. Not entirely, right? If I've got a comfortable spot where I like my batting gloves and I take a cut and I knock a foul ball and that here, I'll give you an example. I got this watch on, right? And I love this watch. Got this watch as a Christmas gift from the soon-to-be in-laws. I love this watch. It is a Casio G-Shock, and it has been very good to me since I picked it up. I'm not Joey B in his watches. He's a big watch guy. This is fine for me, yeah? And I got a spot that it sits real nice on my wrist, but as I move around and I move the mic around and all that, sometimes it twists just a little bit, and every now and then I got to reset it, right? I got to grab it and move it around. Same thing with a cleat, with a glove, with a watch. When I get into the box and I go to get eyeballs on the pitcher, I want to make sure that I am comfortable. You ever had a piece of clothing that wasn't sitting right? You got a tag scratching the back of the neck, or you sit down and your pants slide down and you got the plumber's crack a little bit. it can throw you off, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm just not comfortable, and now you're not dialed in. I want to make sure when I get that bat up, I am zen, top to bottom. And if I got to unstrap and restrap a batting glove, great, right? That's just kind of part of it. So I don't have a problem with resetting, and that's why I'm fine to have there should be 2 clocks. There is a 8-second out of the box batter's clock. And then once that 8 seconds expires and the batter's back in the box, now we switch to a 17-second pitcher's clock. I'll even give you a few seconds of the pitcher clock back to make up for it. But you go back to having a 17-second pitcher's clock. Once the batter's in the box and that pitcher's on the clock, he can wind up and deliver as soon as he's ready. That's on the batter. Couple of shout outs on the live stream. Mark Shelley, the seductive voice of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, watching on the stream today. Shout out to Mark Caruso, one of my old frat bros, watching down in Central Florida. What's up to you? Nephew Lou is watching down in Pensacola with the little brother. What's up, Lou? Sean, miss you guys. Luke, Joey B, James. Let's see. Steven is up in the stream today. Mike up in the stream today. Hudson up in the stream today. If you are not watching with us on the stream, you can do it now. Facebook.com/TheFanUpstate or go to Twitter.com/TheFanUpstate. You can find the stream link there, or go to YouTube and search The Fan Upstate on YouTube, or go to Twitch and search for The Rob Brown Show on Twitch, and you can watch the stream there as well. All available to you. Skrilla's in the house. Steven's in as well. By the way, Steven, phenomenal email yesterday. I meant the world to me, so thank you for that. You can watch the stream live all 3 hours every single day. Come behind the scenes. You can have conversations with myself, with Lonzo when he returns on Monday, with T2 today, who is here with me as well. Come on in, watch the stream, go behind the scenes, have those those off-air conversations with us, and see what award-winning radio truly looks like, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get to a couple more topics on the radio broadcast today. I have been telling you guys for a week that after the move that the Panthers made to get to the number 1 overall draft pick in the 2023 National Football League draft, that C.J. Stroud is the guy. C.J. Stroud's the right pick at number 1, but just a tiny but here. My old man used to tell me, before you argue, make sure that you understand, not agree with, but understand why the other side of the argument is happening, right? I think this is a position that a lot of us would do very well to work on. When you are set to get into an argument, a debate, I think it is important not just to argue your side, but to understand why the other side is arguing what they are arguing for. And sometimes you're going to come to the conclusion that they're arguing out of bad faith. They're arguing because they don't understand. They're arguing because they believe something to be factually correct, which is not. And sometimes you're just going to go, you got a good argument. You got good reasons to believe what you believe, and I just still disagree with you. I believe C.J. Stroud's the right pick at number 1. I believe that C.J. Stroud's the play. I think he brings a little bit more versatility at the quarterback position than Bryce Young does. But I challenged myself yesterday to put together a good reason for drafting Bryce Young. Why would Bryce Young be a guy that so many analysts are making the argument to bring into Charlotte. And I decided to sit down and go, okay, let me make an argument for Bryce Young that takes into consideration or tries to understand why there are so many people pushing for Bryce Young. Here's what I came up with. First and foremost, something that I have said and hit on a number of times so far this smokescreen season as we get ready for the draft, which is in a month and 3 days in Kansas City. The biggest factor here is when it comes to being a pure quarterback, a guy that takes the snap, drops back in the pocket, reads a defense, and delivers the football. Bryce Young is the best in the class. If you go back and look at highlight reels from this past season for the Alabama Crimson Tide, you are going to see Bryce Young deliver the ball to receivers coming out of breaks faster than anybody else in college football. The guy is not only a brilliant student of the game, and we'll come to that here in just a minute, but on top of being a brilliant student of the game, he sees the game in real time better than any other quarterback does in this entire class. Bryce Young is not just a student of the game, but he's a guy that can execute the knowledge that he acquires as a student of the game on the field better and faster than anybody else. He delivers strikes to guys that are not even out of their break yet, so that when they whip that helmet around, the ball's there for the taking. One of my favorite things from last season, when I went back and have been watching quarterback tape to get ready for this draft, to try to get a thought on who it was that the Cats should and will end up taking at number 1 overall. One of my favorite things to watch was Bryce Young delivering 15-yard, 10-yard, 12-yard in routes. If you go watch the game film, you will watch, and by the way, doing it against, and I hate this argument, but sometimes it's a good one, against SEC all-conference defensive backs, against overall more talented SEC defenses. Go back and watch Bryce Young deliver quick strike in routes. Mid-range, quick strike in routes. And what you will see is Bryce Young drop back, and the motion of the throw and the release all happens before the wide receiver even plants the outside foot and gets the head whipped around to look back at the quarterback. When you see that right hand dig in, turn left, look back at the QB, that ball's already halfway through the route, man. That ball's already halfway through the route. And Bryce Young does that better than anybody, not just in the SEC, in college football. The second thing that I love about Bryce Young is that while he's got no problem throwing into tight windows, Bryce Young does not take risks with the football. Now, there are some quarterbacks who build careers out of taking risk with the football, out of throwing into tight windows, and high risk, high reward is a real thing. Bryce Young probably took better care with the football through the air than any other quarterback in college football last year as well. He knows where linebackers are when he's throwing those quick in routes, those mid-range in routes. He understands, all right, I need to deliver the ball now because he's about to cut in, but there's a linebacker there. So instead, I'm going to wait till step 2, throw it left, make the linebacker keep working out. You can see not just that thought process happening in Bryce Young's head, but the execution of it as it does. The clean pocket throws from Bryce Young were the best in the football last year. But I'll give you one more thing. This, I think, is going to prove pivotal for Bryce Young at the NFL level. Bryce Young, while he does not have the running capabilities down the field of CJ Stroud, Bryce Young has one element to his game that I truly believe the only comparison at the NFL level right now is Patrick Mahomes. Now, Bryce Young doesn't have the improvisational skills that Patrick Mahomes has in terms of the sidearm throws, the underhand throws, the overhand jump shot pitches when he can finally commit a linebacker to stepping up and stopping him. But what Bryce Young does have is that he's very nifty and he's very slippery behind the pocket. He is not careless with the football when he is. You very frequently saw Bryce Young drop his frame down, right? He's already small. It goes 5'10". You'll notice that Bryce Young checked in at 204 at the combine, just 10 pounds lighter than CJ Stroud. But Rashad Beard of the Panther Nation podcast, who joined the show yesterday, and we agreed on one thing. Both of us think Bryce Young ain't 204. All right? Bryce Young is at most 195, 196. At absolute most. And there are some people who think he plays closer to like under 190. There are ways to manipulate your body weight. It's like a boxer trying to make weight, right? You can manipulate your weight up or down. Just drink you a big old fat gallon of water. You're going to put on 3.5, 4 pounds. You're going to wake up at 2 a.m. to go pee, but you're going to do it. You're going to tip the scale. And that's why Bryce Young refused to weigh in at his pro day, right? Because he'd have checked back in at 192, 193 tops, and we would have ended up with question marks at that point. Bryce Young, being that size, does have one advantage, which is when larger defensive players are in his face, he's able to drop the frame down, get the shoulders down over the hips, create a little bit of escapability there, and wait for a route to develop. That is Patrick Mahomes-esque. And I think there is something there's something that can be taken away from that at the next level. The only difference is, again, going 5'10", 190. If a 6'7", 295-pound lineman lands on that guy, he may get Thanos out of existence because that's a very large weight difference, right? Now, those are the positives I've got about Bryce Young. He's quick. He's escapable. He stays behind the pocket at improvs. He delivers a better football than CJ Stroud and, frankly, every other quarterback in this draft class. Those are the reasons that I understand people calling for Bryce Young to be the number 1 overall draft pick. He's got all of those weapons at his disposal, and the belief is that those weapons at the NFL level will allow him to have a Drew Brees-esque career despite his size. But if I'm going to argue against those, I've got a couple of arguments. The first one is this. He delivers the best mid-range to probably long-range ball in this draft class. The problem I have here is that the short ball and the check down aren't there for Bryce the way they are with CJ Stroud. Short range, Bryce Young lacks a little bit. Throwing to running backs on checkdowns. His game film has a lot of inaccuracies. Throwing to tight ends, running shallow crossing routes underneath wide receivers. For whatever reason, that ball's just not there. Now, that is a fixable problem. But CJ Stroud doesn't miss that ball. And if I'm looking at Carolina's roster construction, and obviously I am, what is Carolina in the passing game set up to excel at this year? With Miles Sanders at the running back, with Hayden Hurst at the tight end, with Adam Thielen at the wide receiver, with Terrace Marshall Jr. and Shi Smith at the wide receiver. What is that skill position set up to excel at? Short to mid-range throws, right? Miles Sanders out of the backfield. Hayden Hurst making shallow crosses. Thielen setting up in the mid-range where there's a hole in the defense. TMJ in the red zone when you got him, when you need him. Those are the positions, those are the tactics this Panther roster is set up for. And those are the throws that C.J. Stroud can make that Bryce Young needs work on. But the other option there is when those short runs or those short passing game situations are set up, if they are well defended, if they are well covered, C.J. Stroud makes plays down the field that Bryce Young can't with his legs. I think that C.J. Stroud is a guy that you can plug in and adopt to your offense as opposed to Bryce Young, who you will have to adopt your offense to him. Bryce Young needs a specific style of offense. Bryce Young in a West Coast style offense would be, I think, and could be, I think, phenomenal at the NFL level. I think Bryce Young could theoretically, ultimately, be a better quarterback than C.J. Stroud. But I think Bryce Young is going to have to be in a very specific situation, in a very specific offense for that to be the case. C.J. Stroud, I think, likely can do a better job fitting into different styles of offense, which allows you to be a little bit more free with your personnel. I think that C.J. Stroud doesn't deliver quite the deep ball that Bryce Young does. I think that C.J. Stroud had that covered up, and this is a check mark in the Bryce Young argument. I think C.J. Stroud had that covered up by having the best skill set of wide receivers in all of college football last year. So he had guys that it was more, it was less of a, here's where I need to deliver the ball, and more of it a bleep it, Marvin Harrison Jr. down there somewhere, whoop, whoop, and just rocketing, grenade launching the ball down the field. But that's not what I need in Carolina, right? I don't need deep ball threat because let's be real, as of today, and this may change after pick number 39, round number 2 of the NFL draft in a month and 3 days. I don't have that guy. Now, maybe I get that guy. Maybe at 39, Smith and Jigba falls down and he's available and I can pair him up with CJ. Maybe there's another wide receiver available there. Hell, maybe I trade up 9, 10 picks and I get one of those guys. But right now today, I need a guy who excels at the short to mid-range ball. I think that Bryce Young throws an excellent mid-range ball and a much better long ball than C.J. Stroud. But I need somebody that's going to hit Sanders out of the backfield on a 3-yard wheel route. I need somebody that's going to give themselves time to allow Hayden Hurst at the tight end on the right side to get 3 yards up the field, cross to the inside, get across the face of the entire offensive line, and then find the football. That guy is C.J. Stroud. I think that C.J. Stroud allows you to focus a little bit left on the offense, a little bit less, on the offensive line and a little more on the skill positions in the draft. If you get Bryce Young, you're going to have to protect him. I've talked to you over and over about how C.J. Stroud had the best skill position set in college football last year. Bryce Young had the best offensive line in college football last year, in my opinion. And you've got to recreate that at the next level. Now, the Panthers already have a very good offensive line in place. But I don't want to get into a situation where halfway through the year we go, okay, this offensive line's not perfect and it's killing Bryce Young. I trust C.J. Stroud a little bit more in situations where the offensive line is shaky to make plays outside and down the field, which allows you to take some defensive pressure off. I understand the arguments for Bryce Young. I will not even be upset if the Panthers go with Bryce Young. But Bryce Young's limitations, the short ball and any movement past the line of scrimmage, are CJ Stroud's strengths. And CJ Stroud's strengths line up with the roster, the talent, the capability that Frank Reich has already assembled in Carolina. And ladies and gentlemen, that is why CJ Stroud is the correct pick, number 1 overall in this year's NFL draft. Let's take a break. We're back after this. I am Rob Brown, T2 on the board. You're listening to The Rob Brown Show. You're listening to the Fan Upstate. All right, guys, got a live read right here. Stay there. Be right back. Oh, you mean I was once again talking to you without my mic on? I are so smart, ladies and gentlemen. I'm learning. So what I was saying to Skrilla there is that there are probably 3 or 4 wideouts that could be available at 39 that might be worth waiting for, right? Including a couple downfield receivers. But I want to make my rookie quarterback as comfortable as possible. The less he has to think about, the less he has to worry about, the more comfortable he is with the talent around him, the better the chance, the odds that he succeeds are, right? So if I can pair him up with one of his college receivers that they've spent a couple of years building up that chemistry, knowing that chemistry, having that chemistry together, I'm gonna feel more comfortable with that, right? I'm gonna feel more comfortable with that. I'm gonna feel better about that, and that's the direction I'm trying to go. That's the direction I want to go in. So I might be willing to give up like a 5th rounder or a 6th rounder to move up and get a guy that CJ Stroud, if that's the pick. And again, I think it is. But I might be a little bit more comfortable moving up to get a CJ Stroud to get a Smith and Jigba that CJ's already got that chemistry built up with, than to bring in another speed receiver that he's got to work on timing, right? There's going to be little idiosyncrasies in the game of Jackson Smith and Jigba that CJ's already familiar with. All right, when his left arm twists this way, it means he's ready to cut or whatever, that I don't have to have him spend a year or 2 learning with a new guy. But if Smith and Jigba gets pulled off the board at 18, that's probably a little too much to trade up for. Then you're right. Then you got a name there.
So easy. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com. Babbel.com. Sponsored by Corley Plumbing, Air and Electric.
At Corley Plumbing, Air and Electric, we provide transparent, upfront pricing you can depend on. Call Corley Plumbing, Air and Electric today, or skip the line and book online. CorleyPro.com. That's CorleyPro.com.
More than the scores. Real sports talk for real sports.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the Rob Brown Show rolls on. Nothing like a little brass in the middle of the day. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, I gotta give a high five to Jason Donnelly and Drew Ingram and Bob Ritchie over at Furman University. FU 1 time, FU 2 times, FU 3 times, FU for at least a few more years, says Bob Ritchie. Furman and Bob Ritchie have agreed to a contract extension. Now, we don't have the terms of the contract yet. Hoping we'll hear about that relatively soon. But Bob Ritchie has received a contract extension from Furman. Jason Donnelly said, quote, according to WYFF4, Bob Ritchie and Furman basketball have achieved unprecedented success that has helped transform our athletics department and our university. We are excited that Bob and his family are remaining a part of our Furman family. I appreciate the support of President Davis, the Board of Trustees, and our donors who have continued to elevate our athletics program. Bob Ritchie just finished up season number 6 at the helm of the Paladin program. How about this record? 139-54 overall, 78-27 in the Southern Conference, and a 72% winning percentage. That ranks top 15 amongst active coaches today. On top of that, Furman has joined Duke, Gonzaga, Houston, Kansas, St. Mary's, and Southern Cal as the only NCAA Division I programs to register 22 or more victories in at least 6 of the last 7 seasons. Listen to that list. Duke, a Mike Krzyzewski-led program until this year, and a John Shire-led program this year that was a national championship pick for at least a handful of bracketologists. Gonzaga, who put together an incredible win over UCLA last night to move on to the Elite Eight. Houston, one of the two most popular national championship picks amongst the brackets this year. Kansas, a team that was my national championship pick this year, and one of the most insane upsets to get bounced this year because of how good they were. St. Mary's, Southern Cal, both excellent programs, and Furman's in the group with that group as the only NCAA Division I programs to register 22 or more victories in at least 6 of the last 7 victories. Furman President Elizabeth Davis, quote, "I am so proud of this team and all that this program has accomplished under Coach Ritchie's leadership, and I couldn't be happier that he will continue to lead this program. Clearly, Bob's record of accomplishments over his 6 years as head coach has been impressive, but this season, he made history with a remarkable run that included a SoCon championship and a thrilling first-round win in the NCAA tournament. Our strategic investment in basketball will continue to pay exponential dividends in the exposure and prestige it brings to Furman, and I can't wait to see where we go from here," end quote. Let me tell you why I love this, why I love that statement, why I love the investment in Bob Ritchie. Furman got on the map. Furman's been on the map, but Furman got way on the map this year with that upset win over Virginia. It wasn't just making the tournament. Making the tournament for the first time since 1980 is great. Making the tournament and knocking out the ACC champion is excellence. Why does that matter? It matters, ladies and gentlemen. It matters because that's the type of win that elevates a program. That's the type of win that allows a Bob Ritchie to go start pulling guys out that are moving up from JUCO programs, which has been a lifeblood in college basketball. I have given you guys my number one example, Chris Duarte. Chris Duarte played at Northwest Florida State College. That's a school most of you probably haven't heard of before I moved here and talked about him. Northwest Florida State College produced Chris Duarte, who signed a scholarship after 2 years there at the JUCO level with the University of Oregon. He went on to be an all Pac-12 player and a tournament player. Now, he's a routine starter in the National Basketball Association. Those are the types of players that you have to go find, but more importantly, convince to come to you at a school like Furman. And that can be difficult because those players get offered by the Oregons, by the Auburns. So how do you convince them to come to a smaller school like Furman? Very simple. You put wins on the table. You go, listen, with what we had last year, we were able to go get a dub over a Virginia, right? An ACC champion in Virginia. We add you to the roster, we get a second round win. We add you to the roster, and we're good enough to beat San Diego State and move to the Sweet 16, which they were. If that is the case, Furman elevates one more level next year. Now they are a Sweet 16 team. Now they're a Sweet 16 team because of Bob Ritchie. But there's a second element to this. The second element to this is that a guy like Bob Ritchie becomes a target for top-tier schools, for Power 5 schools, right? We've been having the Brad Brownell discussion for I don't know how long. I should rephrase that. Y'all been having the Brad Brownell discussion for I don't know how long. I've been having it for 3 years since I got here. Do you know what name, when I talk to Clemson fans who are ready to move on from Brad Brownell, do you know what name gets thrown at me the most? Bob Ritchie. He's already in the upstate. He's made recruiting inroads here. He knows the area. He's got support in the area. Why not Bob Ritchie? Furman just locked him down for at least a few more years. And listen, if Bob Ritchie continues to run 72% winning percentage year in, year out, if Bob Ritchie can take Furman back to the tournament with another SoCon championship next year, et cetera, Bob Ritchie's going to get looked at. He's going to get targeted by bigger schools. So grab this guy now, right? Lock him up now, because what you do want to happen is for Bob Ritchie to keep turning in those 72% winning seasons, for Bob Ritchie to keep winning SoCon tournament titles, for Bob Ritchie to keep going to the dance, for Bob Ritchie to keep winning at the dance, so that when, I'm going to say if, for my own optimism's sake, if Bob Ritchie, or if you want to be a pessimist, when Bob Ritchie gets that call from a Power 5 conference to move on, and if he elects to do so, which, by the way, certainly wouldn't judge him for, if that happens, Furman's a destination now, right? Furman's a destination. I look at schools like Gonzaga. Gonzaga is only in the position Gonzaga is as a mid-major because they built a level of success that created a situation that people want to be there, to be a part of that legacy. Head coaches, players, they want to go there and continue to build on the top of the legacy that is in place. You can do that now at Furman, right? You can create a destination that, first off, coaches who are there might be, you might be able to create a situation. And this is not a shot. I don't mean this disrespectfully, though some of y'all are going to take it that way. You can create a situation where if a Clemson calls Bob Ritchie and goes, we want you to leave Furman and come here, Furman's coach goes, why? Why? Why would I want to do that? I'm a mid-major dynasty. I'm a tournament participant every year. That's going to take investment from Furman. But with success comes interest. With interest comes money. With money comes investment opportunity in your coaches, in your team, et cetera, et cetera. Bob Ritchie might look and go, why would I leave Furman and go to Clemson? Why would I want to go there when I've got this level of success here? Wins like the win over Virginia help you do it. Luke said, not going to lie, but that win wouldn't have happened without the bad inbound pass from Virginia. Yes, Furman came back from a 10-point deficit, and yes, they made that shot from the bad pass. Yeah, but here's the thing. A lot of mid-major teams would not have had the talent to even be in that game. Furman was. And those types of mistakes are only capitalized upon by a well-coached, well-disciplined team. Furman was. That win was, even if it was an odds-defying win for the Paladins, an odds-defying win created by a well-coached, well-disciplined team that did not panic when Virginia started to move forward. Joey B pops up in the stream. Says the last 4 prior SoCon championship coaches are at Power 5 schools and have a combined 2 tournament appearances in 10 seasons. The grass isn't always greener. That's spot on. That's exactly right. Now, I'm not willing to write them all off because keep in mind they're traditionally moving to schools that aren't having success. Lamont Paris is one of them. Moving to South Carolina. Struggled this year. Was able to get the number 1 recruit in the country, Gigi Jackson, to come there. Still a rough season, still a tough season. But you got to think about the situation Lamont Paris was saddled with, right? He was saddled with a team primarily composed of transfers from other schools in. Some of the best players from Frank Martin's team moved on, followed him, or went elsewhere when he called it a career at South Carolina. Well, actually, when South Carolina called it a career for him. Doesn't mean he will or won't be successful. Means the challenge was there. But, again, you might be a coach that looks at the situation. You might be a coach that goes, all right, why would I want to go to a Columbia, to a Clemson, where I know that I'm starting my entire career all over, right? I'm starting this whole process all over again. I got to build more recruiting inroads. I got to build more talent. I got to work on the pipeline. I know I'm going to go through a season where a lot of guys are going to transfer out because, as Rob Brown has told me over and over, players play for coaches, not for schools nowadays. When I could stay here, be a respectable mid-major conference champion, go to the tournament, and very clearly, I have a school that's willing to invest in me, as Furman just showed that they are. Furman has handled this magnificently. Bob Ritchie has given them a return on investment. Go back and watch last Friday after the Furman victory over Virginia. Go back and watch all of the college basketball highlight shows. Every one of them said Furman fit 11 times. How do you get the next generation of basketball players? Either pure recruits or JUCO transfers looking to move up into tournament level basketball to come to your school. Step one is they got to know about it. They got to know who a Furman is, what a Furman win is, and where they are. And how do you get them to do that? You go win. You go win the conference. You go win in the tournament. Bob Ritchie has done that. Furman will get better now. And this was the right move for them. Don't give Clemson an opportunity next year to fire Brownell and steal him away. Invest in him now. Show him now that you're willing to invest in him. And let him continue to have that success for you. Let him keep having that success for you. That's what Furman just did. That's what Bob Ritchie is doing. And we are all benefiting from it. Let's take a break, come back, wrap up hour number 2 on a Friday. It's the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. All right, guys, I'm going to go get me a cold drink because this one's been sitting out too long. Be right back.
seriously as low as $2 per cartridge. Over the past 10 years, 20
Old T2 over there learning what getting older feels like.
Oh God, I hate it, y'all. This back pain is unreal, man. I wasn't even doing anything. I didn't pick anything up. Wasn't playing a sport or
Me too. About
anything.
7 weeks ago, I pulled a muscle in my back sneezing. So you don't have to do anything anymore. It just happens. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
Yeah. Seriously, all I did was went to turn the water on and I was just like, whoa. Oh my God. Just sharp pains right through my back. And
Joey B with the line of the day.
That's right. Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang.
Always streaming wherever you are on the Odyssey app.
Wrapping up the second hour of the Rob Brown Show right here on the Fan Upstate. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Rob Brown, T2 on the board. Sweet 16 last night, UCLA Gonzaga. I cannot tell you how damn impressed I was with the Zags last night. Watching that game, sitting at the house, UCLA goes up a dozen, and I'm like, that's it, man. Like, they're just Gonzaga can't get past Mick Cronin's defense. But then Drew bleeping Timmy decided, I got this. Decided to just take over last night. Drew Timmy had one of the single most impressive college basketball games I have ever seen. 16 of 24 from the floor, including one from deep. 5 offensive rebounds en route to 13 overall rebounds and 36 points. 4 assists in this game. Had a couple of blocks as well, and he fouled twice. Drew Timmy last night put on an absolute clinic in what was one of the wildest endings to a basketball game we've seen in a long time. And I told you before we went off the air yesterday that Gonzaga v. UCLA was going to be the game of the tournament. Now, that's not to say we haven't had a couple of other very impressive games. And that's not to say we won't have another couple of impressive games, as we will find out the second half of our Elite Eight later on today before it gets kicked off on Saturday. What I am going to say is that there is a difference between a game with a wild ending and an incredible game from start to finish that has a wild ending. Gonzaga jumped out early. UCLA stormed back, took the lead, extended it. They were up what? At halftime, they were up 13, I think. And then the scores got flipped in the second half. And Gonzaga just absolutely... Listen, I love Coach Few. Not because I think he's a great coach, which he is. Let's be abundantly clear. But because the Zags under him have probably the most, I don't even know what word to use here, impressive mentality of any team in this tournament, right? For whatever reason, Gonzaga's just a team that can just dial it in at exactly the right moment. Gonzaga's a team that can just dial it in, push a button, and have a complete mentality shift once they figure out what they're trying to do. I thought Mick Cronin's Bruins were going to win last night based on their ability to lock it down defensively. One of the better defensive teams in this tournament. Instead, what happened was Gonzaga figured out how they were trying to lock it down. Drew Timme absolutely took off as the player we know he can be last night. And it was just all over after that, man. It was just all over after that. Gonzaga in the second half did everything right. But I'm going to circle the number. There are two things that I tell you to look for if you end up with a bracket pick that you're stuck on. The number one number I tell you to look at is defensive efficiency. Now, that number can, not always is, but that number can be a little bit confusing. Because then you got to start keeping in mind caliber of opposition, a mid-major team versus a team that's playing through a conference, for instance, like the SEC this year. But I'll tell you what number is not misleading. And it's a number that will 100% of the time give you a very, very clear indication of what team might be the right team to pick, and that is offensive rebounding. Second chance opportunities. Last night, Gonzaga shot better than UCLA down the stretch, 50% to 41.8%. So 50 to 42. Last night, the three-point shooting was nearly identical. The Zags 6 of 16, the Bruins 7 of 18. UCLA was better from the free throw strike, 81% to 53%. But the number that will almost always give you a good indication of what team to pick is offensive rebounds. Gonzaga had 16 of them yesterday. UCLA had 7. Now, overall rebounds can give you some indication as well, and it did last night. Gonzaga, overall 50 rebounds. UCLA, 26. Gonzaga nearly doubled up UCLA on the boards. But the second chance opportunities, the offensive rebounds, that's the number I'm looking at. More than doubled up the Bruins on the offensive glass. Gonzaga was earning second chance opportunities. Gonzaga was taking possessions away from UCLA. And Gonzaga was knocking down their shots late. That was the difference in that game. And that is a mentality. You have to learn the mentality of being a Bulldog team, pardon the expression, on the glass. Gonzaga, the Bulldogs, were a Bulldog team on the glass last night. They owned the glass. They wiped the glass. They kept UCLA off the glass. And at the end of the game, it was the difference in a 79-76 win. I picked UCLA in this game because of their defense. I thought they'd lock it down. I thought they'd keep the shooting percentage under for 50%. They did not. But part of the reason that Gonzaga got to that 50% mark from the floor was how many offensive rebounds and second chance opportunities they were able to convert from right underneath the rim. Because of the fact that the Bruins gave up 16 offensive rebounds. That is 16 high percentage shots under the rim that Gonzaga was able to knock down. That's why they shot 50%, and it's why they won the game. Let's take a break. We got 1 hour left to go and plenty of stuff to talk about within it. The Rob Brown Show's on your radio. It is the Fan Upstate.
All right, Mark's emailing me.
There's a whole lot more to know about sound if you really want to go into it.
Just say play 97 The Fan Upstate on your HD radio at WFBC HD3. There's just one more time. And on your computer at
thefanupstate.com.
Hello, I'm David Figueroa, co-founder of Melinda's Craft Pepper Sauces. Over 30 years ago, my brother Greg and I set out on a mission to offer the world a better hot sauce. We felt that most hot sauces were just basic. And let's face it, basic is boring. Since introducing Melinda's original habanero pepper sauce, we've launched 31 more exciting and delicious sauces, like our ghost pepper sauce, our Thai sweet chili, and our newest and best-selling black truffle hot sauce. People ask us, what makes Melinda so good? Well, we think it's our approach to making sauces. We think like chefs do. Instead of just burning someone with hot peppers and vinegar, we use fresh plant-based ingredients, carrots, onions, garlic, lime, and the finest chili peppers to set your mouth on flavor. They're really fantastic, and once you try one, you'll want to try them all. We'd love for you to try them, and right now, you can get a 10-pack of our best-selling sauces with free shipping at melindas.com. That's MELINDAS.com. Melindas.com.
I studied Spanish in college and never got fluent, but then I tried Babbel.
Want the most effective way to learn another language? In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel's bite-sized lessons will have you learning another language in as little as 3 weeks.
Babbel is all conversation-based, so it gets you speaking quickly about things you actually talk about in the real world.
You'll really see a difference in how you can speak and how conversational you can be in just a few weeks.
Babbel isn't just lessons. You can listen to podcasts, play games, watch videos. You can even take live online classes with a language teacher. There are so many ways to learn with Babbel.
The lessons online and in the app make it easy to learn from pretty much anywhere.
University studies have shown that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a semester of college Spanish. If you want to learn a new language, there's no better way than Babbel. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBL.
Oh, that was the end of the hour.
Yup. On to the next one. On to the next one.
I haven't heard that song in a minute.
That's the song the Swamp Rabbits play when they win.
Who was that? Jay-Z? And
Yep.
Kanye?
Yep.
Yep.
In this market, you'll find Fisher Investments is different than other money managers.
Different how? Aren't we all just looking for the hottest stocks?
Nope. We use diversified strategies to position our
Rob
clients'
Brown
portfolios for their long-term goals.
2023, hour 2.
No, we tailor our clients' portfolios to their goals and needs.
But you still sell investments that generate high commissions, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We're a fiduciary. The highest
Yeah, I wish
standard of care
Windows
for financial
and computers in general would just let you save things with symbols. It won't let you though.
Sounds like you really look out for your clients.
We do, because our priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. That might be why most of our clients come from. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to Fisher Investments. Clearly, different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
CBS Sports Radio.
Manufactured locally for the Carolinas. This is the Rob Brown Show.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on. The third, the final, the best, the money hour of the program goes now. This is the Fan Upstate. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rob Brown. T2 is on the board with us today. If you would like to be a part of the radio broadcast today, now's your opportunity. Now is your chance to shine, as we have got 53 minutes separating us from the weekend. 844 fan phone, 844-326-3663, 844-326-3663. That's the phone number. The text number, should you wish to send a text to the show, is 71307. 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, FAN, F-A-N, and we will read them on the air. You can tweet me at The Rob Brown Show, at The Rob Brown Show. You can tweet everybody on the station by hitting us up at The Fan Upstate, at The Fan Upstate, if you want to come at us in that direction. We'd love to have you. And, of course, you can email me if you got something that's a little more long format, but you don't want to go on the air, by emailing me, rob.brown@thefanupstate.com. rob.brown@thefanupstate.com. Hit me on the old email device, and I will respond to you somewhat promptly. I don't know if I'm the only anybody else have this issue. I get reminded constantly that if you text Rob Brown, sometimes it takes like a hot minute to get back with you. And sometimes if you text Rob Brown, he just doesn't. I promise you, it's not because I am a boathead. I promise you it's not because I'm a jerk. It is because when I get a text on my old Google Pixel here, my Android, when I get a text, it puts up as I just did a little bar notification on the phone, and I leave it there, right? I leave it there because it's like, all right, I got to get back to that. But I also get notifications for everything else on my phone: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, ESPN, CBS, Fox Sports. I mean, literally, I probably get 30 to 50 push notifications per hour from all, because I got to be up on breaking news and all that. So I have all of my news set to come to my push phone. I get news pushes from Google, right? And sometimes I'll go to swipe to remove something and I'll accidentally remove a text. And it's like, all right, just remember to get back. And then I just don't. And it's worse if I go open my message threads. If I go open my message threads and your message has not been read yet, it's bold, right? Like it's like this message is unopened, but once I open it, it gets unbolded and then it goes away. And if it falls into the chasm, that is my red text that don't stand out to me, I just will forget to write you back. It's not because I don't like you. It's just that I forget. And I can't be the only one that lives their life this way. I just can't be.
I'm bad about that too.
I'm awful at it. And I know that I'm awful at it. And I apologize for being awful at it.
I'm sure my entire family thinks I hate them. And it's like, no, it's not that. It's just, I missed your text.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm the same way with the text line. Like I see all your text and they're like, I have to, on the old prep notebook, I have to write down a text that I'm like, okay, I don't want to get to this text now. I want to save it because it's in relation to something I got to talk about later. Or you just sent me a text about the last segment. I'm already up in the news segment, so I'm going to come back to it later on. Sometimes I just forget. So text fan 71307 and make it good so that I have to read it immediately and not forget about it. It's real simple. Ladies and gentlemen, I do have some breaking news for the South Carolina Gamecock fans in the audience. According to the Greenville News, and a story that was posted by our own friend of the show, Emily Adams, as of 20-ish minutes ago, South Carolina men's basketball star Gigi Jackson has entered the NBA draft. The 6'9", 215-pound freshman is a likely first-round draft pick with most of the mocks. Not a lottery pick, but a guy that'll be available in the middle to end of the first round. If Jackson is drafted, he would be the first South Carolina player drafted since Sindarius Thornwell back in 2017. And he would be the first-round selection from the Gamecocks since Ronaldo Balkman in 2006. The draft is on June 22nd. The Columbia native, 5-star recruit, number 1 prospect in the state, coming out of high school, landed in Columbia after he originally committed to North Carolina for the class of 2023, but he flipped his commitment to the Gamecocks and reclassified into the class of 2022. He went live on his Instagram earlier this morning to announce that he would be going to the NBA. Jackson led the team in scoring, averaging 15.4 points, 5.9 rebounds per game. He was named to the SEC All-Freshman team and earned Freshman of the Week honors after recording a double-double in his Gamecocks debut with 18 and 10 against SC State on November 8th. The best game of the season, according to Miss Emily Adams, friend of the show, came against then number 16 Auburn, where he scored 30 points and had 8 rebounds in that game. But of course, the season did not go the way that Lamont Paris, GG Jackson, and the Gamecock fans would have wanted it to. The Gamecocks ended the season with an 11-21 record. They went 4-14 in the Southeastern Conference. The season ended in a conference tournament game against Ole Miss, where the Gamecocks were felled 67-61. Jackson started 29 of 32 games. He came off the bench in 3 straight games back in mid-February. You'll remember this. We played you the audio from his Instagram Live when he aired his frustrations very, very publicly. Lamont decided to take away the starting role, have him come off the bench. That, of course, came after South Carolina's 2-point loss at Arkansas, which turns out Arkansas was a pretty good team this year, but still, the frustration was real. Listen, if you are a Gamecock fan who said you did not want GG Jackson back next year, you are either lying or not good at basketballing. Because yes, you did. Yes, you did want the guy who led the team in scoring and rebounds to come back next year. Of course, you wanted the guy who led the team in scoring and rebounds to come back this year. I don't mean to boil it down to a linguistic simplicity, but duh. Yeah, like yes, you wanted GG Jackson to come back next year. But GG headed to the show. Lamont Paris will have to figure out how he is going to replace those points and boards next year, which will not be easy. You wanted more, right? And I think the frustrating thing about South Carolina basketball this year was how many games you were close, right? You go back to the early part of the season, you put up a win against Clemson. That was a team that was the number 1 seed in the NIT. Granted, they got bounced. You lost against Furman. That was a tournament team. But there were some good wins. You won at Georgetown. That's a solid W. You beat Kentucky in their house, ladies and gentlemen. But then there were the real bad ones. You lost at home against Tennessee 85-42. Then you went to Kentucky and you took a dub, but then you came back home and you lost to A&M 94-53. Wildly frustrating. Went to Georgia, lost by 3. Came back home against Arkansas, lost by a deuce, right? Lost by 2 in that one. Beat Ole Miss on the road, not bad. Beat LSU at LSU, that's a good win. Came back home, played Alabama, took them to overtime, lost by 2 in a game that frankly could have, should have, would have won. But then you turn back around and lost by Tennessee by 40. Tennessee was not as good as Alabama. You lost by 40 in that one. Now, granted, Tennessee and Alabama both still dancing. Well, scratch that. Tennessee was still dancing until yesterday. FAU! The Owls, baby! Who? How about FAU getting it done over the balls? But you lost by 40 to that one. Lamont Paris' job was always going to be tough. I warned you, Gamecock fans, when Lamont showed up on campus, even with GG Jackson, this was always going to be a very difficult year. There was no way it wasn't going to be. Because while GG Jackson was a stud, is a stud. That's why he's an NBA first-round draft pick this year. While he is a stud, the rest of the collective talent from the year before was there to play for Frank Martin, not South Carolina. There are going to be some players who want to play for a school, but the majority of them are going to play for a coach they feel is going to get the most out of them, is going to provide them the most opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. Frank Martin left. The best guys on the team that were there to play for Frank Martin left with him, some of them following him to his new school. It was always going to be a very difficult year this year for Lamont Paris. I would love G.G. Jackson to stick around for one more. I would love G.G. Jackson to be a guy who goes a long way in helping you get more talent in the house. But here's the reality. I ain't mad at G.G., and neither should you be. G.G. Jackson is about to make a boatload of money and more money than he would have made at NIL levels in Columbia. Not because it's Columbia. He's going to make more money from the league as a first-round draft pick than he would have made at Duke or North Carolina as well. Would have loved for him to stick around one more year to help Lamont Paris go to the next level. Not going to happen. This is going to be a major uphill battle now for Lamont Paris. South Carolina fans were rabid about their football program. They were rabid even when Muschamp had them in the gutter. They increased the rabidity when Shane showed up. And when Beamer had the season they had this year, including knocking off the arch nemesis Clemson Tigers at the end of the year, South Carolina fans could not be kept off the text line. They could not be kept off my Twitter feed. I have heard zero basketball talk from South Carolina fans. Step one of getting your program to the next level is creating a fan base that cares. Clemson fans care dramatically more about their basketball team than South Carolina fans care about theirs. That at this point is just an obvious statement of fact. Clemson fans are hitting me with Brownell's got to go, or we should this, or we should that, or the AD screwing the pooch, or whatever the argument is. It feels like, unless you were talking about Don Staley's girls, Carolina fans can't be bothered to talk about basketball. One of the reasons, and I don't say that as any disrespect to Lamont Paris, but I don't think South Carolina fans were super juiced about that hiring, right? No, I frankly don't know if it's a good or bad hire yet. I think there's still a lot to be determined. But what I am comfortable saying here is that when the hire doesn't inspire gas, doesn't get fans jacked, it's going to be hard to get players jacked. I thought the G.G. Jackson recruitment was an absolute win, but you got to do something with it, even when the team's down. And the fact that Carolina fans just don't care about basketball unless it's Don's girls is, frankly, to me, kind of a bummer, dude. Text line 71307. Send your text in. Let me know what you got to think about any of this. Texter sent text that said, quote, read this too, read it and weep. So there you go, texter. I read your text on the air. Mission accomplished. You may go about your day feeling good about your life. Let's take a break. We'll come back. Got a few more thoughts to issue before we call it the end of this hour of the radio broadcast. It's the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate.
3.5% to their bottom line the first
All
year.
right.
As a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/sports. Ramp.com/sports. RAMP.com/sports.
Sponsored by Taco Bell. Double steak grilled cheese burrito with Taco Bell. 2 servings of grilled marinated steak and a melty 3-cheese layer inside, plus grilled bubbly cheese on the outside. At participating Taco Bell stores for a limited time only while supplies last. Contact local stores for prices, hours, and participation which vary. Tax extra.
Getting the game on the Rob Brown Show.
Only on the fan. Upstate.
Got a few more minutes here on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. Earlier, I gave you the reasons that those who want Bryce Young as the number 1 overall pick for the Carolina Panthers want Bryce Young as the number 1 overall pick for the Carolina Panthers. Now, I give you the breakdown for why the pick must be CJ Stroud. The easiest one to go with is he's just bigger. There's fewer injury concerns. He's less likely to go down to arm tackles, right? Guys are going to have a harder time not just wrapping him up, but dragging him down. That's the biggest argument overall. But let's talk about the guy. Let's talk about what the guy who picked up for Justin Fields is capable of doing. Let's talk about the fact that the finalist for the Heisman Trophy. Let's talk about the fact that the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, Big Ten Quarterback of the Year, the Freshman of the Year, ranked second in the FBS in pass efficiency with a 186.6 PE. The guy who ranked third in passing touchdowns with 44 of them. The guy who threw just 6 interceptions. And the guy who clicked at a 72% completion percentage. Let's talk about the guy who led the Buckeyes to lead the nation with over 561 yards of total offense per game. Let's talk about the guy who did all of this despite separating his throwing shoulder in the season opener. Let's talk about the Conference Player of the Year in 2022. The guy was just unbelievable. He's a 2-year starter. Both years, Ohio State was either the or one of the most high-octane, most efficient and proficient offenses in college football. Let's talk about a guy who stepped into a role as the OSU quarterback that is one of the most high-pressure roles in college football. And let's talk about the guy that, despite his ability to be an outstanding runner, is a dude who is much more willing, much more comfortable, and very much prefers to stand in the pocket and throw the football. One of the misnomers about CJ Stroud is the fact that he can run leads folks to start thinking that he should run. And that's not necessarily true. CJ Stroud is a guy who can extend drives with his legs. He gives you the opportunity to say, hey, yo, if it is 3rd and 3 and we run a short pass scheme and it's not there, you can use your legs to pick it up. But he's not going to go into a 3rd and 3 with a short pass scheme scenario and think, I need to look legs first. He's a guy who wants to throw the ball. Georgia had an impressive collection of pro prospects defensively. That is why Georgia was able to so thoroughly dismantle the Horned Frogs of TCU in the Natty. They did not do that against the Buckeyes. In fact, the Buckeyes were a dramatically bad field goal attempt away from knocking off your eventual champs. And had they knocked off your eventual champs, Ohio State would have been the eventual champs. I feel good about that. But they did that because CJ Stroud was confident and comfortable throwing the football. He does not hesitate to attack with his throws. Now, he is going to take more risk throwing the football than Bryce Young does, and those risks will be more risky than Bryce Young because he doesn't have the accuracy at the mid to deep range that Bryce Young does. But the good news is he's not an idiot with the football. He takes very good care of the football. The good news is he doesn't hesitate to take those risks. A lot of the problems you have with quarterbacks with high turnover rates is not that they attack, it's that they hesitate before they do. There is that one split second of hesitation of, is he going to get out of that route and get to the spot? Let me go ahead and throw the ball. And that split second is just enough time for an excellent cornerback or safety to sneak an arm in there and either knock it down or take it away. CJ doesn't have that hesitation. When he decides where the ball's going, he gets the ball there. I'll tell you one thing CJ Stroud has that Bryce Young does not. Bryce can get the ball down the field with accuracy. CJ gets the ball down the field with a cannon, right? He has got sideline mechanics that you got to have. And while the accuracy isn't there to me, like it is with Bryce Young, if your receiver gets a step of separation, it doesn't matter if he's 60 yards down the field. CJ can get there. Tell you one more thing that I love. CJ Stroud thrives under pressure, right? Thrives under pressure. I go back to that Georgia game. They didn't lose that game because of CJ Stroud. Hell, they were only in that game because CJ Stroud had the game of his career. Now, that's not to say Bryce Young can't handle pressure, but CJ seems to live for it. And one more thing that I love about CJ Stroud. Bryce Young, as we mentioned earlier, because of his size and speed, is a slippery quarterback. He can evade pressure from inside the pocket. He can escape pressure from inside the pocket. And while he does not have the improvisational throws that Patrick Mahomes has, those sidearms, those underhands, those jump shots, and he may develop them, who knows? He never had to rely on them at Bama. While he doesn't have the improvisational throws, he does have the improvisational runs. But the reason that the accuracy of Bryce Young, especially in the short routes, is in question is because when Bryce Young runs and it's time for him to deliver the football, he does not have the ability to come out of a run, set the plant foot, get back on the platform. That's the phrase you'll hear quarterback coaches use. When you come off the run, before you throw the ball, I want you to step on the platform. What does that mean? I want you to get that back throwing leg set, planted, and be able to power off of it and throw a ball just like you would if you were in a clean pocket. That can be tough to do coming off a full sprint, running away from a 300-pound defensive lineman. You're running, he's on the back. Before you throw the ball, and I want you to just, unless it's completely unavoidable, to throw it off the run while you're still running. Inaccuracy comes from that. And a lack of precision comes from that. What I want you to be able to do is that last step of a run, even when that D end or DT is bearing down on you, that last step of the run, I want that to be one where the hips adjust to the target, the back foot plants, you step on that platform, and you power into the football like you would if you were in a clean pocket. Doing that out of the run is a difficult skill to learn. It is kind of one of those things that you either have it or you don't, right? You can go out there and work all day on the pure form of a three-point shot. And hell yeah, it may even get good at a three-point shot, but it's kind of the same thing. You come off a screen and square up to the basket and go up for a three. If you're not able to get that inside foot planted, stop the momentum, get on the shooting platform, and raise straight up, any momentum that you're carrying left, right, forward, backwards off that screen impacts your shot. Now, if you're a guy like a Steph Curry, you have got just that natural feel of, all right, my body is still leaning right because of the momentum, so I need to adjust the shot. But that's not really something you can learn how to do. Either you can do it or you can't. CJ Stroud is better than Bryce Young about coming off the run and utilizing that last step to square the hips, plant the foot, and even with the momentum of the run, power off of it and throw a precise football. Go back and watch his game film. Go back and watch CJ Stroud rolling left or right out of the pocket. Go back and watch how on that last step of the run before he delivers the football, how that back foot plants, the hip square, and he powers through the throw, even coming out of momentum. Bryce Young is an excellent student of the game. In fact, Nick Saban at Bryce's pro day pointed out that more often than not, when it was film day in Tuscaloosa, when the team got together to watch the tape, Bryce Young usually showed up to the meeting having already watched it. Bryce Young's a student of the game, and that's important, right? Bryce Young is going to watch your game film. He's going to watch the game film of the opposition. He's going to pick up tendencies as well as anybody else in the league. Cerebral quarterback. I don't know that CJ Stroud has that or not. I have not heard Ryan Day comment on it. Doesn't mean he doesn't. What I can tell you is, again, if you go back to the film, keep an eye on CJ Stroud as he reads progressions. You see that helmet turn. Bang, bang, bang. 1, 2, 3. Primary, secondary, third, back to primary. CJ Stroud on tape is a guy who doesn't panic, is a guy who knows his progression, gets through his progression. For a rookie in the NFL, that's what I'm looking for. I want to know that a guy doesn't panic, that a guy knows the system. CJ Stroud approved at Ohio State. He knows the system. I want a guy that I know knows the system, knows the progression, knows the order, and is comfortable under pressure, still checking out the order 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's exactly what you get out of this cat. That's exactly the guy you get. I will also tell you that while Bryce Young at the mid to deep range is the most accurate quarterback in this class, relatively speaking, CJ Stroud is about as accurate of a quarterback as you're going to get at any draft class, right? I think because Bryce is a little bit more accurate with the mid to long range football in terms of dropping the dime, the brain naturally leads you to believe, well, that means CJ's not. That's not the case. In terms of accuracy, I will put CJ Stroud up against the overwhelming majority of quarterbacks that have been drafted as top 10 picks. CJ Stroud is more accurate than Trey Lance. He's more accurate than Justin Fields, in my opinion. And again, numbers are skewed because you got to look at talent level that guys were playing with, opposition guys were playing it with. But just looking at the film and where the ball drops, CJ's as accurate as any other quarterback in the top 10 of the last handful of years. It's just that he's up against Bryce Young, who is a freak when it comes to that. And the biggest thing of all, Bryce Young can, when he needs to be a game manager, right? He got a lot of opportunities to do that. And he got a lot of opportunities to do that based on the fact that Ohio State would frequently come out and beat the hell out of people. So there were just aspects of the game for the Buckeyes where we don't need a guy to go out there and be an absolute superstar. We need a guy to go out there and just manage the game correctly. We need a guy to go out there and just handle the business, run the scheme. Don't try to overdo it. Don't try to do it too hard. Just go out there and handle your business. And CJ Stroud, when it is time to just go run an offense, just go run the offense. Be basic, right? I don't need you to be extra. We're up 27 in the third. I don't need you to be extra. If they make a storming comeback, we'll ask you to be extra. Right now, I just need you to go lead the offense. And CJ does that, right? He understands where the game is. what the role in that game he needs to play is, and he does that. So those are the pros. Now, because as I said earlier, I like to understand both sides of the argument, I'll give you some of the weaknesses. Number one, CJ got legs, right? We talked about that. And I told you that CJ is a guy who prefers to still throw the football, even though he's got legs and even though those legs can bail him out of certain situations. One of the few negatives that I have about CJ is that it's almost to a fault. I played basketball in high school with a guy that was my best friend at the time, Drew Holt. Drew had one of the most precise three-point shots I've ever been. The guy was a pure three-point shooter. And I remember our JV coach, Jeff Palmer. Coach Palmer was great, man. I remember Coach Palmer. And one of the things that I remember about him was him chewing Drew Holt out. Not for not doing things the right way, but because Drew was such an unselfish player that if there was any sort of defense against his three-point shot, he wouldn't take it. The guy could shoot an incredible arcing three that he could get up over 6'9", 6'10" players because it had such an arc to it. And what was incredible about it is that you could put 6'9", 4 feet inside of Drew's shot, and if this guy looked at all like he was going to come out and D up on Drew Holt, he wouldn't take the shot. He'd wait for the defender to come out. He'd work on dribble, drive, and pass to the inside. He was an assist machine. And I remember a game against Tate High School, I want to say our sophomore year, where Palmer told Holt, if you finish this game with more assists than three-point shots made, not attempted, made, you're not playing next game, right? Basically told him, shoot the damn ball. You've got a shot. It's an incredible shot. It's an accurate shot. If you have more, I can tell, Drew was a guard. And I can tell you most coaches would absolutely love to have a guy that was putting down 14 assists a game. And Drew was always in that range, like 9 to 14 assists per game. He said, if you finish with more assists than made threes, you're done. I'm sitting you next week, right? Forced Drew to see the game from a shot taker perspective instead of a shot maker perspective. And it changed him as a player, and he became a better player, a bigger threat to score. I don't know what the way you do that with CJ is, to make him understand that your legs are a weapon, and I need you to use that weapon. I'm not saying I prefer you to run. I'm not saying I need you to be Michael Vick. I'm saying what I need you to do is, if you got a throw that's a 65, 70% risk rate, and you got a run that's a 20% risk rate, I need you to use your legs. Don't be hesitant to run. You can run. You are a runner. Don't be hesitant to do it. I need for him to be more selfish as a player. Second thing that concerns me. CJ Stroud is very good at escaping pressure. I'll tell you where I worry about it. He's not great at recognizing it. You bring a standard 4-3, you bring a standard amount of pressure at CJ Stroud. That pressure comes through, CJ's fine. He can roll out. He can get out of there. I'll tell you where he gets in trouble. He gets in trouble against Dennis Allen and the New Orleans Saints. Not that Dennis Allen's a great head coach. I'll tell you what he is, a very good defensive coordinator. A guy with a lot of exotic blitzes, a guy with a lot of exotic schemes. If you create a situation where you're throwing blitzes from untraditional spots, if you're throwing guys at him from places that you wouldn't expect based on defensive alignments, based on protection schemes, and those rushes are successful, CJ will often not pick it up as clearly as I'd like. I'd like to see him spending a little bit of effort being better at recognizing threats, right? You ever played Guitar Hero? Used to love Guitar Hero. I was a banger at Guitar Hero. One of the reasons why is pattern recognition, right? Once you get down with a certain pattern and you memorize that it's button, 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 then the next time you get to that point in the song, you don't have to think about it. Just button, 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 button. And you get through it, and then you move on. What a nerd-ass comparison to what we're talking about. Whatever, it works. CJ is very adept at patterns. He's very adept at knowing, all right, 4-3, tight ends on the left side, wide splits to the right. That's probably where the pressure's coming from. And the eyes, the peripheral vision is pointed there. What he's not great at is when he knows that's where it's coming from, pattern recognition, and you send somebody off the strong side blocking scheme, and you bring an extra guy to create that pressure from the left side, he's not super adept at picking it up, which creates a situation where he's got to start his run paying attention to the defender coming up behind him instead of where his wide receivers are down the field. Got to direct the attention, creates a problem. Last thing I worry about. Told you guys early. I think CJ Stroud is a wonderful progression wide receiver, or a quarterback, pardon me. Really good at progression 1, 2, 3. But one problem that a quarterback will get into sometimes, and I think CJ falls into this, is a guy who locks in on his primary receiver. And it's not every play. It's not even all that common. But let's say CJ Stroud comes to the line. You're looking at a single high cover safety, and he's got a Marvin Harrison Jr. over on the right-hand side. So a scheme gets designed where you're going to run 3 receivers to the left-hand side of the field, 1 to the right. They go single high man coverage to the outside, linebacker sitting over the top to prevent you from taking the easy one because you're looking at a, 3rd and 7. So you know you got to get the ball down the field. They go single high or they go too high. Well, you know that defense is rolling to their right, your left, because you've got 3 receivers on that side and they want to lock that down. In doing so, my solo wide receiver on the right, Marvin Harrison Jr., he just became my primary receiver, right? He just became WR1. I'm looking for that guy to make a move. And if CJ gets locked in on that guy and is unwilling to come off of that guy, that's when he takes the risk that I can't have him taking. That's where he takes the risk that I've got to be concerned about. And when he takes those risks, that's where the interceptions come from. Again, he only threw 6. That's not bad, but that's where they come from, and that's where I get concerned. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We will wrap this one up, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rob Brown, T2 on the board. The Rob Brown Show's in your ear holes. This is the Fan Upstate.
Season's over for Clemson women's basketball. They lost in the 3rd round of the NIT to Florida yesterday, 73-63, the final at Littlejohn Coliseum. The Tigers wrap up the season.
All right, guys, come right back. We will wrap this bad boy up. Stick around, y'all. You throw a little Mr. Brightside down.
Oh, I love that song.
Every bar we play in front of loses its collective boat every time we get into that genre. Every time.
You know what's crazy about that song? Back when I was DJing, I had a college kid come up to me and ask me for Mr. Brightside. And I was like, yeah, sure, not a problem. I'll play it. And then I was like, you know what? Because it was a popular song with college kids at the time. And I asked them, I was like, why do y'all like this song so much? They were like, we love classic rock. And I'm telling you, man, my heart just melted in that moment. I was just like, you just ruined it for me.
If it makes you feel better, if you listen to the classic rock stations now, it's just all the stuff I listened to in high school.
I know, right?
Like we have moved from the point where classic rock is like, all right, coming up next from 1985, it's Def Leppard. Now it's like, all right, coming up from 2002, it's the Anthem
or Nirvana or something. And you're just kind of like, oh God, I'm getting old.
Give me another one. I can't talk
all
about
right,
this anymore.
Hashtag. Oh, you're gonna love this one. Hashtag Pikachu.
Okay. So my little nephew has just my little nephew's 5, and he just got into Pokemon, right? Like just got into Pokemon, and his grandma and dad introduced him to Pokemon Go because it's a great way to be like, all right, hey, let's go take a walk, right? Let's get outside, let's be active. Pokemon Go. Well, they've made me put it back on my phone to play from a distance with him, which is fine.
They made you?
Yeah, totally. I didn't do it on my own volition. That'd be weird. They made me put it back on my phone to play with the kid, which is all well and good, except for he's relentless. He's like, Uncle Rob, you haven't sent me a gift today. Uncle Rob, you didn't catch anything yesterday. Uncle Rob, I just caught a shiny this. How come you don't have that? And I'm like, well, crap, I can't lose to a 5-year-old. Now I got to go out and hunt Pokemon as an almost 40-year-old man.
You know what's great about that, though? He's always going to remember playing Pokemon with you.
Oh, sure thing.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it. I just don't want to walk. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the show. Hope you all have a spectacular weekend. Lot going on. So Monday's show is going to be wildly busy. You know that already. Thank you guys for listening. I sincerely, genuinely, truly appreciate it because I wouldn't get paid if you didn't. Back here on Monday with a very busy show. It is the Rob Brown Show. Don't jerk your drive. I'll punch you on the face. You've been listening to the Fan Upstate. Well, y'all done blew up the chat while I was saying goodbye, huh? Let's see here. I didn't have the sound on. Outstanding.
I turned it on.
Okay.
Like halfway through. I happened to look over and see it.
All right, guys, y'all are awesome. Thank you so much for being here every day. I appreciate it tremendously. And we will see you all back here on Monday. Go Bits. See you at the Triumph game Saturday. If I don't, you don't know what you're missing out on. Have a great one. Bye, everybody.